making noise during labor? That's the question today. And if you are planning a natural birth, then you need to know that not making noise during your labor can actually undermine your confidence, sabotage your birth plans, and also lead to unnecessary medical intervention you weren't expecting. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth Series where I go deep into everything that you need to know to plan and get your empowered, true natural birth. And if you've been following along with this series, then you know that we're going into the 20 natural birth traps that you want to avoid. If you're new to me and you've just stumbled upon this and you're curious what this video is about, and you're wondering, what are natural birth traps? Well, a natural birth trap is exactly what it sounds like. It is a trap that you fall into when you are planning a natural birth that is going to sabotage your journey. Think of it as you were going to the store and you wanted to pick up some organic ice cream, but you weren't reading the labels properly, or somebody told you that's the organic ice cream because nothing was really labeled organic ice cream. And you're like, okay, yeah. And you take it home. It says it's ice cream, and you open it up and you look at the label, but there's still preservatives within it. Or maybe you didn't even get ice cream. Maybe it just looked like ice cream, but then when you really look closer, it's not even labeled ice cream. It's frozen dessert, and there's even more preservatives in that. That is basically the difference between physiological birth, unmedicated birth, and natural birth as perpetuated within our system and birth culture, which could also just be vaginal birth, even with an epidural. So you want to have a natural birth as natural as possible. And you may have the mindset of, well, I'll bring in medical intervention if necessary, but I'm not expecting it. And that is what most people think, especially first-time moms. There's more first-time moms planning natural births than there are second-time moms planning, because the second-time moms usually get traumatized and think, I can't handle a natural birth. I wasn't able to do it before, and I was screaming too much and making too much noise, and then I ended up getting the epidural. But what if making noise is actually the key? And that's what I found out when I was having my own natural birth at home with my baby the second time around. I attempted this in the hospital, and there were a lot of traps that I fell into that made that experience less than pleasant. But I still managed to have a completely unmedicated birth, only really getting the gas and air. So no drugs were in my system other than the Entonox gas, which I was able to basically breathe in oxygen, and that haze would clear. And the only reason I really took the gas and air was because I wanted to make the surroundings disappear. I knew that if I had the gas and air, then I would just be able to go through my process, get into a labor trance, and ignore what was going on, because I didn't want to be in the hospital. I didn't feel safe there. Go and check out some of my other videos where I talk about how you need to feel safe in your environment in order to have a natural birth. So if you are new to this series, then you may also have noticed the timestamp. Yes, this is a deep masterclass. No, it's not a bunch of fluff. Yes, you're actually going to learn all of the tips on how to have a natural birth and make noise to make it less painful. No, I'm not going to sell you anything. Information is free, and I only charge for access to me. In fact, you can go through my other two paths if you are not able to get to the premium coaching level, and you wouldn't even have to pay a cent. All I ask is that you pay it forward. Like, share, subscribe to my channel, and pass this on to other moms in the mom groups. Let them know that this is a more effective way of handling the pain, because the more you're able to vocalize, the more you're able to open up. And I'm going to be talking more about that inside of this masterclass. But if you are kind of pressed for time, or you only have about 5 minutes to really get the overview, then I'm also going to encourage you to check the description of this video. I may have already put in the transcript. This is different from the transcript that comes automatically on YouTube. That one isn't editable. That one is basically the AI has decided, oh, this is how it sounds. And it may not be exactly correct. So there will be errors within that transcript. But my transcripts are not just transcripts, they're not just words. The deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasures that you'll uncover. So with my transcripts, you basically have 3 different ways of reading it. Number 1, you can skim to the blue text. Those are the highlights. And then within the blue text, you can also look at the bold text. The bold text is the overview, the key information that you would want to know as you go through. I tell you additional tips that you're going to want to pay attention to, and it allows you to basically skim and be like, I'll come back to this whole thing later and read it in full. So then third option is you read it in full, but then there's another layer. The deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasures you uncover. And I have embedded links within this transcript so that you can go and get additional resources, a lot of the same things that I used when I was still trying to piece everything together myself so that I could have my empowered birth, because nobody was teaching things with my context. So I needed to gather up the education from other people, other birth workers who understood how natural birth works, and then also grab other perspectives to be able to enhance that and be like, oh, there's more here than what's on the surface. There's more than just what they have. They're missing something, and bring those pieces in. So you go and get that transcript, and then you'll have this whole masterclass, and you can go and read it in your own time. You can come back and watch these videos later. The other thing is that this is technically the do-it-yourself path. These are the main classes, and I would suggest that you treat this as if you had paid for it. Treat this as if you had actually put down about $97 or more to come and learn from me personally. And you're like, I'm going to take all of the notes because I paid good money to be here. And then make sure you also go back and watch at least 3 times. So the first time you watch this masterclass, you're going to get the overview. You're going to have your mind blown, and you're going to be like, oh, that's something I knew, but I didn't know this piece. And then you're going to basically know what's in the class. Then the second time you watch it, you're going to be able to go a little bit deeper. You're going to have the overview. So you'll be like, oh, I know the method, I know the system. And now the aha moments are coming as I'm watching these other parts of the training. He's like, oh, yeah, now I see how that applies. And then the third time you watch it, now you're not just watching as how does this apply and where are the deeper messages here? It's also how can you apply that to your own empowered birth journey? Because I'm committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you can work with me or not, whether you get any of my self-study programs, or even subscribe to my community newsletter that I put out weekly. Because empowered birth is for every mom. Every birth can and should be a beautiful and empowering experience. And I'm really, really tired of seeing all of this education either in the direction of natural birth is awesome and nothing ever goes wrong, and you have to have a pain-free birth in order for it to be right, and you must have just not had a high pain tolerance, all the way to the medical side of I would never have a natural birth. I want all the drugs, all the medications, all the interventions, because birth is unpredictable and I want to be safe. You know, there needs to be a balance, and you need to come to your birth from a place of power, not a place of fear. And the way that fear hides is by you not being able to see the full picture. So here at Empowering Moms, I'm all about you seeing the full picture. I believe in a full spectrum birth education, and I believe that information needs to be freely accessible at every single level. Yes, the deeper you go, the more access you have. However, all of the information is scattered out there, and all you have to do is reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and I will make sure that you get those resources and know which classes to go check out next if you are choosing the do-it-yourself path. The other thing is information is completely free, and I charge for access to me. We are very protective of our energy here at Empowering Moms, and I want you to also be protective of your energy, your time, and your resources. You only need to invest in things that are going to put you on your path. And if you think that you have to get a course or a book in order to learn the information, and then you spend the money and realize that it's not right for you, I don't want that to happen. So that's why I give you the sample and show you exactly what you're going to be learning, so that if you have those deeper questions, you can either seek out the resource. We create the resource for you. We create a course that goes deeper into it. We have books out there. I even put my first book, Your Empowered Birth, out completely for free on YouTube. You can listen to it inside of the playlist. And if you do need that support, we do have laser coaching calls available. Now, priority does go to our premium coaching clients because they're the ones that are paying for more access to us. Priority also goes to self-study VIP at a lesser level. When you pay for self-study VIP, you're basically going in and saying, hey, I actually value this enough that if I get stuck and I want you to look over my homework, that I'm going to get that help and I'm going to get it right away. And I could actually sit on a call with you. But other than that, you're free to roam around the sites. You're free to go and check out our Empowered Birth channel, and you're free to check out our social media. Information is free. I only charge for access to me. So how these courses are basically laid out, if you already know this, you can skip ahead to the story. You know what's coming. I'm going to share a story first about my experience with my pregnancy and birth and how I realized that making noise actually made my contractions not hurt. I only felt a little bit of pressure, and I have now since trained my clients to do the same thing. This is also based in what Ina May Gaskin has taught and Rachel Reed. Anyone who understands physiological birth understands this model. Orgasmic birth also has a little bit on this as well. So I'm going to share that story, and then I'm going to share how not making noise or thinking you have to be quiet or thinking that you aren't allowed to scream or curse or do whatever you need to do in your process actually undermines your confidence, can lead to unnecessary interventions you otherwise wouldn't have had, and even sabotage your physiological process. I'm also going to share with you the context around this, why we get so skeeved out and freaked out about making noises during our labor and what's really going on. I'm going to share with you that physiological perspective and how it ties into other things that you might not have put the pieces together, or even if you have, it might still be a little bit foreign to you because this is not something that we really talk about that often unless you are in the deeper levels of the woo-woo in the natural birth community. Because, there are some people that really do teach it at this level, and I do have connections with them. And at the same time, there's more within the empowered birth method. So I'll teach you my empowered birth method for dealing with the pain and being able to vocalize and being able to feel safe in your body to do it. And then I'll also share more on what you would want to do next within our 3 paths to empowered birth, if you had any more questions. And finally, I will recap. Then I will tell you more about just what's coming up in the Empowered Birth series. And then you're free to explore. You can go back and watch the video again. You can go check out some other trainings, because the deeper you go with empowering moms, the more treasures you'll uncover. Okay, so now let's get into the story, because this is one of my absolute favorites. So way back when I was pregnant with my daughter in 2015, I knew I wanted to do things differently than I did with my son. When I had gone to the hospital with my son, I had been laboring fine at home and I wasn't making very much noise. I was able to just kind of move with the waves. But when I got to the hospital, I noticed something changed. I noticed that I needed to be louder in order to get through the contractions. And I also noticed that the other noises of other people were distracting. This is why the hospital is not always the best environment. In fact, in triage, was having kind of a screaming match with the woman on the other side of the curtain because she would start moaning and groaning through her contractions, which was her process. But then I couldn't actually do my thing. So I would start going louder. So I was incredibly loud in that hospital, and I did not care because I had grown up basically always being told I was too much, not allowed to do something. I had a very don't tell me what to do personality, and I didn't really want to follow the hospital's rules. I was pissed off with the hospital, and I was pissed off with the staff for daring to tell me I couldn't have my home birth. So as far as I was concerned, I was doing them a favor by following the rules, and they damn well were going to pay for it. I told you I'm a bit of a rebel. So I was like, I'm not having the IV. I'm not going to give in to vaginal exams. They better not put me on my back. Like I'm here because they took away my home birth, but I'm certainly not going to follow any of their stupid rules. I'm not wearing that stupid hospital gown, not even after the birth. They can deal with me being half naked, and I'm not going to allow anybody to tell me how I need to do things on their schedule. I was very, very combative. Now I recognize that the hospital just was not aligned for me, but I needed to have that experience in order to know what a lot of moms were dealing with. So I'm sitting there, I'm making all these noises, and I recognized I needed to have the gas and air. But even when the pain was going away, what I noticed during my contractions is I would take in the gas and air, and I'd feel all dizzy and happy and in my element. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'd wait and I'd be in my trance. And then I'd go back in and I'd go, ah. And as it got stronger and stronger over time, I would do it faster and faster. And then during the time that I was in transition, which was all of 2 minutes, this is when suddenly things like hit the fan. And I'd felt all the pressure and then nothing. It just stopped. I'm sitting there like, okay, I think I'm done. I'm going to start trying to push now. And that's when I got pulled from the tub. And you can read more about that story inside of Your Empowered Birth. But the second time I had a map that I was following because I was the pre-empowered mom. I had found Improving Birth with Dawn Thompson, and I was learning about the fact that they're not allowed to not allow you with Kristen Piscucci. And I learned about how basically nothing that was being done in the hospitals was evidence-based by Rebecca Decker. And I was just following these three women and also Jen Camel at a different level, but I wasn't a VBAC mom. So it was more to help my friend Christine, who you can also read about inside of Your Empowered Birth. And I share her story quite a bit. But what I recognized is that I need to do things a lot different because most of the education is to make you a good compliant patient. And I am not that. I'm going to do things my way. I'm not getting screwed out of my home birth again. And this time I'm not going to have the gas and air because they don't bring that to the home births in my community. So I'm going to be doing this without that labor trance. Maybe I need some supplementary education. This then led to me going to the local library, and I was fortunate enough that they had some of the books that would help me. One was just a basic idea of how to plan home birth. I also learned about hypnobirthing, but the two that really helped me out the most were Ina May's Guide to Childbirth and Painless Childbirth by Judita Tornetta. I'm not even sure if that's how I pronounce it. I mispronounced it probably inside of my other video where I talked about the 15 books that I recommend. But these were the two that I had basically taken out of the library way back when I was planning my second birth with my daughter. And this one was very woo-woo for me back then. Now I understand it better, but she basically was talking about the throat chakra and how that affects your vocal cords. Now, Ina May Gaskin also talked about vocalization, during labor and how this allows you to move the energy down. So if you understand how vocal cords work, and then you also understand with the cervix how it opens, these are both sphincter muscles. So the more open and deep throaty vocalizations you have with your throat, the more that energy also translates to a relaxed pelvic outlet and an open cervix. Open mouth, open cervix. Now, I was still skeptical because way back in 2015, I was more of a stats nerd. I was more of a give me the research and data nerd. And I didn't really see the spiritual side. In fact, my midwife and my doula would often talk about how I needed to visualize the birth and how I needed to have these affirmations. And I would be like, yeah, okay. But give me the actual science because this is all woo-woo bullshit. I don't feel that way anymore. In fact, incorporating a lot of the affirmations and mindset work has been incredibly powerful. But, that's the thing about empowered birth is that when you discover those pieces of yourself that maybe you were burying before, maybe somebody told you that that's not the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to be loud and wild and out of control. You need to be polite. And this ties into another area that I'll be talking about later. But it made sense. I can't really have a good orgasm if I'm not making noise. If I have to suppress my noises, it's more like a sneeze. When I'm able to go wild with it, that is when I can feel that energy just coming through me. So, in certain situations where you don't feel safe to make those noises or you're afraid of making the wrong ones, you're constricting your vocal cords. And then when you constrict your vocal cords, you're also tensing up your pelvic floor, which means that it's going to hurt. I actually experimented with this. In my labor with my daughter, the next night when I actually went back into labor and I didn't have the midwife there and I didn't really have the doula doing more than just keeping the pool warm, I was in my element. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I wonder if there's actually something to that. So I started vocalizing as I was sitting on the toilet and trying to just labor and also go to the bathroom. My son had come into the room and I was kind of making my noises. And he's like, Mommy, you hurt? I'm like, Mommy's singing the baby out. You want to sing with me? He's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. And he would join in. So he was unafraid. Like this little almost 3-year-old was unafraid. And he was singing the baby out. And then he went to bed eventually. But I was making those noises and they were like basically lower. And my ex, who was my partner at the time, he had said to me, you were actually quieter at home than you were at the hospital. I'm like, well, yeah, at the hospital, I was also kind of in a competition with people, and I also didn't really want to be there, and I was loud on purpose. And also because like there's just something about that. I needed to get that energy out. So I was loud. But you see a lot of quiet births. And there's a lot of births where you don't even hear the sounds the mom is making because it's like put to music. And when you do hear sounds, it's usually the mom screaming, I hate you, which, in itself can also be part of the process. But someone on the outside might think that it's excruciating pain when really you just need to get that energy out. I mean, think about this again in the context of sex. If you are sitting there and your partner is doing their thing and you are just screaming as they are railing you, and they're like, am I hurting you? How much are they going to take you out of that? No. There is a reason why the dark romance books exist, isn't there? Exactly. That's why 50 Shades was so popular. We want to have that animalistic power. We want to be able to scream and have our partner be like, yeah, scream louder, keep going. Well, the same thing is in birth. The same energy that got that baby in is the same energy that's going to get that baby out. So if you are a screamer in the bedroom, most likely you're going to need to let your partner know. And I tell my clients this too. I'm like, okay, so, when she's in labor, it's going to sound like sex. I just want to let you know that. Like when she's doing her thing, it's going to sound like sex. You're going to recognize those sounds. I don't want you to be put off on that. I want you to recognize that's a good thing. And, like when you're going at it and like you think you're hurting her, but she's like, no, don't you dare stop. Yes, that. And it's like, oh. So then it kind of takes the taboo off because now they're expecting it. And then if it's not even as wild as they're imagining in their heads, then that kind of allows them to hold more space. But if you keep saying, oh no, birth is painful, and the sounds that are making, like it means that you're in pain, instead of realizing that maybe it's actually part of the process to get that baby out, maybe it actually feels good, then like it kind of takes away that fear and shame and all the taboos around it. So I was recognizing it's like, okay, I am a birth nerd. I'm a birth advocate, and I'm doing this for my own education as well. So I'm just curious, what happens if I don't make noise during this contraction? So I deliberately sat here like this. And I decided I don't like it. I realized how much it sucks to have my mouth closed, my jaw tight, to try to stop from screaming. And all the while, the sounds are trying to come up from my throat. So I'm like, okay, experiment done. Like, I know now I need to actually vocalize. So I'm very vocal when I am in labor. And I'm also very vocal when I'm in pain. Another story, not birth related, that this also helped. About a couple summers ago, back in 2023, I just published my book and I had just supported one of my clients through her VBAC after 3 previous cesareans. Dee Dee, you may have heard her story if you checked out the masterclass on castor oil. But I was also thinking to myself, it's like, oh, I'm awesome. I'm having a wonderful day. And then I was going to go, and after listening to some music by some random guitarist that was on the beach, listening to Coldplay, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling so in my element. I was not watching where I was going, and I was barefoot. And I'm walking back over to my side with the tent and my blanket, and I was about to record a video because I wanted to be able to read sections of my book. In fact, if you check some of the videos from 2023 in the summer in July, or you go into the archives, you might see it where I'm leaning over here and like my foot is stuck inside of a cup of water because I stepped on, and this is the thing, is I thought I'd stepped on a piece of glass that had been hidden in the sand. It was not glass. It was a wasp. I stepped on a wasp. Their stinger was between my big toe and my other toe. And I'm like, oh my God, this hurts so much. And I needed to be able to deal with that. I had never been stung before. I had never experienced that in my life. And then I incorporated my labor vocalization. And I'm like, oh, I know what I can do. I know exactly what I can do. When I'm on the bus dealing with this pain because I can't move or anything, I'm going to shake my leg to deal with it because I can't be moaning on the bus. But I am going to apply the pressure right now, and I am going to go, ah, ooh, ooh, until it started to dissipate. Because actually, it does work. It really does work. When I had back pain, I did the same. Like, there's just something about vocalization. But we've been taught not to scream, not to actually make a scene when it comes to pain. We're supposed to tough it out because, big girls don't cry, right? But no, actually your tears and your screams and your vocalizations and your moans and your groans, they are all welcome. So one of the things that I tell all of my clients is like, I don't care what sounds you make. I don't care if you sound like a cow or an elephant making these sounds. Your sounds are welcome here. And I don't want you holding them back. I want you to release them. So we're actually going to practice this before you even get into labor. I'm going to share the sounds that I made. And then you're going to see how this can actually help you in your process, how it can actually move things forward. Because the more you're able to make those sounds, the easier it's going to be for you. So now that you have this context of this wonderful story where, honestly, I didn't feel much pain, even at the sharpest peaks, even when I was going into transition, it was more the pressure that was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that pressure was because a very squishy water balloon with a baby's head was now in my birth canal. And there was like extra pressure because the waters hadn't released. And then suddenly the waters released and the jet of water hit my clit. And I'm like, oh, well, there goes the bag of waters. But now it's actually easy. It doesn't hurt as much. It's not as bad as when I had that bag of waters. So understanding that you can go from, oh my gosh, this is super painful, to I'm going to vocalize through this and I'm going to recognize the wave. And I know that that sharp peak is when I want to let that go, when I want to really push down and scream through that. And you need to have the right people around you, which I will get into. So how does not making noise undermine your confidence? Well, if you are told that you need to stay quiet, that if you make noise, it means you're not coping, you think you're not coping well. This is why I suggest that moms make a plan and a code word for their partner to use so that they know that any sounds that mom is making does not necessarily mean that mom is not coping. It can be very stressful and frustrating as a doula when I am helping somebody at a lower level and I don't actually have them as a client, so I can't devote all of my time and attention, and dad is undermining the process. We will talk more about that deeper into this masterclass, how to make sure your partner doesn't screw this up. But if the nurses are also thinking this, then they're also going to be like, well, you're not coping well. And then you start to think, I am not coping well. I don't have a high pain tolerance. Do you really not have a high pain tolerance? Or have you been shamed for every time that you cried, every time that you screamed, and you were told to just suck it up and you couldn't? And you're like, I don't know how I can suck it up. I can't. It still hurts. I'm not able to do it. So obviously, everybody else is so much calmer around me. No, they're not. They're just silently suffering. And they've been taught the same thing. They've internalized the feeling that they just have to suck it up. Everybody feels pain. We need to stop thinking that some people feel pain less than others. It's not that. It's that some people have different coping strategies for pain, or they just don't show it because they have been so afraid of showing how painful things are. Think about marginalized groups or people who are really oppressed, and think about how professionals would say, oh, well, this group of people do not feel pain like we do. Is it that? Or is the fact that they express their pain or their discomfort or they try to fight back, could that actually make things worse for them? So they're like, I just need to get through this. I know it's awful, but I have to just bury this because I need to dissociate. Otherwise, like if I make noise, they're just going to punish me worse. They're just going to do worse to me if I actually make a scene. So I need to just stay quiet because, that is one of the trauma responses, is to just completely flop, dissociate, and act like it's not that bad. And, we've done that within gynecology and we've done that within obstetrics, where care providers will say, well, the cervix check shouldn't hurt that much. Not everybody complains. You're the one that's complaining. No, you don't actually know what somebody's feeling inside of their body. You don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what they're actually sensing and how they're dealing with it or not dealing with it, silently internalizing their trauma. You have no idea. So here's the thing. Assume that anybody who seems to be tolerating something better than you are might actually either have a strategy around it, but it's still the same level of pain, or they're silently suffering and they're too afraid to speak out. So make noise, okay? Because this undermines your confidence. The next step is that they push the epidural on you. The nurses are like, oh, if you're in that much pain, there's no shame in getting the epidural. You're in the most highly suggestible state. And even if you thought you were coping well, if everybody else around you on the outside is saying, I don't know if you can handle this, this is not actually that bad yet, it's going to get worse. They don't actually know that. They don't know how your contraction pattern is. You could have a contraction pattern that basically stays the same, intensifies for 2 minutes, and then you're done. You could have a contraction pattern where everything is spaced out and it doesn't really gradually get that much more intense. That is just your pattern. They don't know. So when they say, oh, it's just going to get worse, if you can't handle the cervix check, then obviously you can't handle a natural birth. No, cervix checks hurt like hell. I've had them. I hate them. I will never have another one. So understanding that, they're pushing the epidural. Now you've got that epidural that you didn't want. How this sabotages your physiological birth. Again, open mouth, open cervix. If you are closing up your mouth and tensing up your jaw, you are also tensing up your cervix and your pelvic floor. If you are tensing one part up, it's going to radiate through the rest of your body. And the more tense you are, the more contractions hurt. That is the key here. You need to be able to open up. You need to be able to surrender. And you can't do that if you're not willing to make noise. If we look in the other direction of physiological birth or sex, if you are trying to get into the zone and have a really explosive orgasm and you are suppressing your noises, you are suppressing your urges to claw or bite or do anything with your partner because you're afraid of what that says about you. You need to be the good girl. You need to have the clean, like demure sex. I'm sorry, that orgasm's not going to happen. There's a lot of reasons why women say that losing their virginity, which in itself is not a real thing. It's just that they're just having sex for the first time. But when they have sex for the first time, they usually say it hurts. But other women are like, no, it didn't hurt. But they were probably more prepared for it. They actually wanted it. They didn't tense up. In fact, there's a lot of women that they have such shame around sex that even when they are married, it still hurts even after just having that first time. And there's actually people that are trying to address this issue because it's not okay. And it's not your body is broken. It's that you are so afraid, so tense, and maybe something is going on with your partner. You don't actually feel safe. You feel pressured. If you feel pressure to perform, you're not going to actually feel the full range of sensations, including pleasure, because birth can be a pleasurable experience. Deborah Pascali-Bonero and Elizabeth Davis talk about this inside of orgasmic birth, which is another layer to what birth can be. So why are we so uncomfortable with women making noises? Well, because the noises, when you are really into your labor and your trance of labor, they sound like sex. And if you're in a society that has basically sanitized women to either be Madonna or the whore, can't be both. Nuh-uh, a good mother is quiet. A good mother isn't sexual anymore. We are uncomfortable with sex. So we don't want to have you sounding like you're having an orgasm we're going to have you be quiet. The other part of it is that if you have been in a hospital environment as somebody practicing, and pretty much everybody gets the epidural, somebody else screaming on the labor ward sounds a lot louder. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. This is also why I suggest you go in at the last possible minute so that you're not screaming on the labor ward the whole several hours. And then that does kind of disrupt everybody. But people would tell me to be quiet. And I'm like, don't you dare tell me to be quiet. You made me come here, so you're going to deal with it. And that's the thing, is like, you really need to understand the environment here. So that ties into the empowered birth method. Okay, so the right mindset is understanding that you need to let go of those inhibitions. Okay, you need to be able to recognize that the sounds that you make are okay. There's nothing wrong with you, and be completely unapologetic and recognizing where you're going to feel safest to make those sounds. Having the right education, of course, is recognizing, hey, this actually serves a purpose. This helps me open my cervix. If I'm directing the energy, the baby is going to be birthed faster than if I hold back these sounds. If I make these sounds, it's also going to allow me to feel less pain because I'm no longer tensing up, I'm surrendering. And if I'm surrendering and making those noises, then that energy that still comes up in sex, like really wild sex, can be moved through me and it doesn't hurt. I mean, if you're moaning and then you have a spanking, it's not going to hurt as much as if somebody just decided to smack you when you weren't in the mood, right? Exactly. It's completely different because you have a different level of hormones and endorphins going through you. You're in a different state of mind. So then you also need to be in the right environment. Obviously, don't pick a hospital that they basically prefer you to just have a completely quiet labor ward. If you have a quiet labor ward, then hopefully it's because they have soundproof walls, but very unlikely. Most likely, they just put everybody on the epidural, which no, that's not going to help you have a natural birth. Pick something else. Maybe a home birth, maybe a birth center, or if you can't avoid the hospital, go in at the last possible minute. So after that, the right facilitators. You need to have nurses, doulas, and care providers, doctors, midwives, who are used to you being able to make noise during labor, that know that this actually moves the baby down, that will encourage you to make the noises, not tell you to be quiet or change the way you're making the noises. Because, there's also those care providers out there who think that there's only certain right kinds of noises to make. And they don't recognize that there's a whole range. Maybe some moms need to have the higher pitched scream in some points. And by telling them, no, 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 do it this way, that affects their labor process. And it's not something that would come instinctive to them. You need to be instinctual. Finally, the right support. Prepare your partner ahead of time. Tell them ahead of time, hey, just so you know, natural birth sounds like sex. I'm going to be making noises that sound like sex. I'm going to be making noises that you're going to remember from certain activities that we did during sex. And I just want you to know that's okay. And I'm prepared for it, but I'm preparing you as well. Because that's what I do with my clients. I warn the dads. I'm like, hey, she's going to make noises and they're going to sound like sex. She's going to sound like she's having a really big orgasm. And you're going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? And that's part of the process. And the sounds change over time too. So as a doula who attends physiological births, I've become quite well versed in recognizing without anybody needing to check dilation or to check where they are in the contraction apps, because those apps are completely useless to me when I am attending a birth. I'm mostly doing it intuitively. And even with my own labor, I recognized I was making certain sounds at different times. And I'm just going to share this little quick tip here. Depending on where she was in the labor process, at first it was deep guttural moans, and then they would ease off. But then as she got closer to transition and her cervix was opening up, and I know which contractions were basically just moving the baby down, which ones were helping the baby be pushed out, and which ones were opening the cervix. With the cervix ones, it's almost like a chatter, like, and that's what she would do, is she would make that sound, and I'm like, oh, the cervix is opening, the last few centimeters. Yep, okay. And then she would basically switch from those to and over and over and over again, like you could tell which one was which. So you're going to have a whole range of noises, and that in itself can be an indicator of where you're at in your process or what each contraction is doing at that moment. So you'll know, and your partner will know. And that is basically how you can get your empowered birth, by just making noise. And it's going to be less painful for you. I'm not saying it's going to be painless, because, sometimes there's variables. Babies get into certain positions that are annoying, and they need to get out of those positions, and pain is a signal for your body to do something a little different so that you can help work through it with your baby. So now we're going to go into the Empowered Birth Method resources itself. Well, the one I'd highly suggest you check out is Painless Childbirth. I know it's a little woo-woo, and now looking back, it was really helpful for me to have that lens, to understand about how labor works with every single chakra system, to be like, oh, that's why it's like that. And there's affirmations in here as well. So if you're like, I don't know much about affirmations, there are affirmations inside of this book. You can also go to Jenny's website, empressbirthworks.com. I do have links inside of the transcript. Not only that, but you can also get to it through my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, if you ever lose the link. And she has affirmations that she's created as well. You can just quickly download them. They're full color. They're absolutely beautiful, because Jenny was a designer in her past life before she became an empowered mom. Now, the other thing about vocalization, what I found really helpful is Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, because she also talks about sphincter law and about basically vocalizing. So those were the two I would highly recommend. You can also check out things by Rachel Reed. And if you really want to make birth a really powerful experience, Orgasmic Birth by Deborah Pascali-Bonero and Elizabeth Davis. Okay, so now that you know the resources, we have the 3 paths to empowered birth. And if you really want to know this and understand this deeper and how to optimize this, then I'm going to encourage you to go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide, and go and check out the overview and get those resources that are in each of the paths. Because this is the do-it-yourself path, where you can just take any one of these master classes and do your own little self-study, which is self-directed. All I ask is that you like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms. If you have any questions, your path is to reach out to us, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, or if you're already subscribed to the newsletter, which is the last part of the do-it-yourself path, then you can just hit reply to any one of our newsletters. I go deep into these newsletters. I share more tips of empowered mom magic. And, I just find things online all the time. I'm constantly connecting with birth workers, including Hetzi Goer, Dawn Thompson, and Cynthia Gabriel herself. So recognizing that I'm constantly looking for more magic to add to the Empowered Birth Library, and you do have more access as a subscribed community member. If you like more structure, you may want to go through the self-study program, Your Empowered Birth Workshop, because there is an entire module on physiological birth, and I share my tips on how to have a more pain-free birth in that module. I also have additional resources to help you get the full empowered birth method. And all you have to do is put in your name and email. Now, if you like additional support, like maybe you want somebody to look over your workbooks, help you find those missing pieces, and even coach you directly, we have Self-Study VIP, where you can basically upgrade from having a free self-study program to suddenly getting some direct support through our email and through our laser coaching, which are 15-minute laser coaching calls. You get one complimentary session with each purchase of a course in the self-study collection. And what this allows you to do is basically say, okay, I'm ready for my call. We look over your assignments, we look over your workbooks, and we're like, do we need to use that call yet? Or can we give you another resource to tie you over until you really, really need that call? Because we don't want you wasting your call on something that we could have helped you with by sending you a resource, right? Because finally, path number 3, premium coaching, not available and accessible to everyone. And we are very intentional on who we take on into our classes, into our high-level coaching. My coaching queens are empowered moms who are taking back their time and energy, and they get paid well for their time, and they get to decide their own hours. And you know, there's a lot of coaching queens out there that would prefer to just maybe take one call per month and make a little bit of extra income. There's some that are going to use it as their actual career. There's some that would teach the entire course. And like wherever you go with an Empowering Moms, it's all about taking your power back. No more permission needed. So now that you know everything about the empowered birth method and you know about our 3 paths, it's time to quickly recap on what you learned. Why do you want to make noise during labor? Because everything is tied back to sex. The same energy that got the baby in is the same energy that's going to get the baby out. So scream, moan, groan, grunt, do whatever you need to do. But you know, you just have to recognize you have your own process. Don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong for doing your process, because that leads to you thinking you need to have the epidural when really that's not the case at all. And finally, you need to recognize that your partner is going to be a little put off unless you warn them. So make sure you warn your partner. Okay. So thank you so much for watching. Again, if you found value in this video, please like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on. Any moms who are asking about pain-free methods or how to cope with the pain, drop this video into the mom groups, because so many people are intimidated about making noise and they think that they did it wrong last time because they made so much noise, when really that could have just been part of their process, and we don't need to make it wrong. So thank you so much for watching. Have a happy, empowered birth journey. Whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business or creative project, birthing a movement, or rebirthing a new version of yourself, Empowering Moms is here for you. And make sure you check back next week, because we're going to be talking about being on your back and how that sucks for labor too. I talked a little bit about this in the last video on continuous fetal monitoring, but there are so many things that you need to understand about how this narrows your pelvic outlets. So that's going to be coming next in the Empowered Birth series. And remember, like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass it on. Every birth can and should be a beautiful and empowering experience. And when you have an empowered birth, you're an empowered mom for life, and no one can take that power away from you again. So thank you again. Have a happy, empowered birth journey, and I will see you next week. Namaste.